Good evening. The meeting of the Monroe Township Board of Education will come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with
liberty and justice for all. Mr. Gorski, may we please have a roll call?
Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Here.
Mr. Chiarella? Ms. Antelis?
Here.
Mr. Braverman? Yes. Mr. Kaufman? Here. Mr. Klein?
Here.
Mr. Leary? Mr. Masters?
Here.
Mr. Tesler?
Here.
Mrs. Ferroni?
Here.
Madam Board President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. In accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law, the Monroe Township Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted August 17, 2012, 1 at all schools, 2 Home News Tribune, 3 Cranberry Press, 4 filed with the clerk of the municipality. At this time, we will go to the public forum. Anyone wishing to speak to the agenda, please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. And I will ask that all board members please hold all your comments, questions, and respond under other board business. So anyone from the public wishing to speak? Please come to the microphone. Please come to the microphone. State your name and address for the record, and this is in regard to anything on the agenda.
Well, it's not specifically anything on the agenda, but I do have questions on the whole business of funding and how funds flow from the state.
Then we'll
Monroe
hold that
Township.
off until the next second public forum.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, at this time, we will go to number 7, an Applegarth School update. We missed 6. Okay, the approval of the minutes for the Public Board of Education meeting of June 5th, 2012. Motion and a second. Mr. Kaufman?
Second.
Mr. Tesler? Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Ms. Antelis abstained? The closed session Public Board of Education meeting of June 5th, 2012. Mr. Kaufman,
Second.
second by Mr. Masters. Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Ms. Antelis abstains. The special Public Board of Education meeting of June 13th, 2012.
So move.
Mr. Klein, Mr. Tesler. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, then we'll go to the public session, Special Public Board of Education meeting of June 13th, 2012.
So move.
Mr. Klein?
Second.
Mr. Masters? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, seeing none, that we approve the minutes of the Public Board of Education meeting of June 20th, 2012.
I'll move that.
Mr. Klein? Is there a second by Mr. Masters? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? None. The closed session Public Board of Education meeting of June 20th, 2012.
So moved.
Mr. Tesler?
Second.
Second by Mr. Masters. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, seeing none, we will go to number 7, which is an Applegarth School update. Dr. Hamilton?
Good evening, everyone. This evening, we are going to do an update on the Applegarth Elementary School. We will be having a presentation this evening that will include information from the building principal, Mr. Dennis Ventrilo. We will also have information from our Director of Transportation, Director of Facilities, and our certified environmental hygienist, Dr. Lynch, will be giving us information as well. We're going to begin with a brief overview of our efforts to create parity with Applegarth with the other elementary schools in the district, and we'll start with Mr. Ventrilo.
Good evening, everyone. I don't want to give my back to anyone.
Just want to say, the adage is that it takes a village. And you should just know is the fact that I'm very proud about the progress that we made at Applegarth School. And it's certainly directly related to so many people coming together to work. And I want to acknowledge Mr. Tague, if he's here, Jerry Tague, and all the director of facilities, all the staff of the facilities, the custodians, the teachers. I want to acknowledge the Board of Education, the business administrator, the superintendent, all the board members, the Buildings and Grounds Committee. I can't say enough. They've all been very, very supportive as far as getting that school in shape for September. I'm really looking forward to, obviously, for September. We have the orientation for the children on Tuesday, September the 4th. Just want to let you know that. Parents have already been informed. With that said, is that I know there's some concerns out there as far as safety, and that's what Dr. Hamilton has asked me to stress this evening. School safety plan, just to let you know, let's do fire first. My expectation is that with the teachers and the staff in the building is that we'll be doing fire drills that first week. At Oak Tree School, probably with about maybe 850 students, we probably evacuated in under a minute and a half. I'm hoping to evacuate Applegarth School in under a minute. And that should alleviate some fears as far as just in case there is a fire. The kids will be out fast, the staff will be there as well too. That'll be supervised and orderly. Drop off and pick up. You should just know this if you're not, and if you're not a parent and you don't know this, is that becomes an issue. It was an issue at Oak Tree as far as the number of parents that are dropping off children in the morning. I've made arrangements is that parents, so this way if you're out there, is that you should just know that as you come into the Applegarth School parking lot on the right-hand side, in front of the trailers, we'll be doing a loop. You can drop off your child there. Your child will be on the sidewalk. They'll come into the main office area there and sign in as there as well too. So we'll have an opportunity then for parents to drop off the children, and they can also come inside. And speaking of coming inside, there'll also be a security person right there. You'll be buzzed in to ensure the safety of the building. Playground safeguards, just to let you know is that there's a number of staff that are coming on board. These are paras, these are adults. They'll be watching the children. We have an exceptional playground area right now. I think there was a concern out there, and I don't know if anybody's aware of it, but there was a concern about an electrical outlet or a box area. That has been removed, and I believe is that if Mr. Tague is here, he can also confirm for me that the fact that the telephone pole that's out there as well too, that is also going to be removed by JCP&L. So it's a great place for the kids. You should see the playground equipment area. You should see the recess area. It's good. Everything is good as far as I'm concerned. Visitors and guests, again, as I said, is the fact that as parents come in, they will have to be buzzed in to ensure the safety of the children. School parity, and Dr. Hamilton just mentioned that. As far as school parity, every program that we had at Oak Tree for grades 4 and 5, as well as at Brookside or Woodland School for grades 4 and 5, it'll be the same programs at Applegarth. Everything from the regular education, special education, any of the support services, special education classes, Spanish, any program that we've had for any of the grade 4 or 5, they will all be there as well too. So if I can assure anybody or maybe answer any questions from anyone about the programs or anything about the school, I'm here for you now. Now would be the time.
Dennis, if we could hold questions till the end.
Sure.
If you can hold your questions till the end of the presentation, that way you can ask everyone who's making a presentation what your questions might be.
Absolutely.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present. My name is Jerry Tague, and I'm the Director of Facilities. I'm going to walk you through the building to give you an idea, area by area, what we did this summer to prepare the school. Starting at the rear of the building with the gymnasium. Last summer, you may recall, with the opening of the new high school and Applegarth being closed, Applegarth Gymnasium served as a storage facility for us. So all of the furniture that we were removing between the various schools was stockpiled at the Applegarth Gymnasium. All of the computers that were being taken out of district service were stockpiled there. So one of the first things we had to do was start to get rid of that equipment. We offered the furniture throughout the schools, and the various schools picked and chose what pieces they wanted. The remaining furniture we put up for sale. Some of the furniture was purchased by some surrounding districts. Spotswood, for example, purchased a lot of the student desks which we were no longer using. Some of it was donated away, and then anything that was considered unsafe was disposed of. We also then went through an environmental recycling program to dispose of all the old computers and technology waste. Once that was done, what we did in the gymnasium is we refinished the gym floor. It's a maple hardwood floor. So we have that sanded down to bare wood, and we have new line striping installed for the games, basketball, volleyball, etc. New logo put in there. And then we also painted the gymnasium. We painted the gymnasium with our maintenance staff, and we did that from about a point halfway up the wall down. There's an accent band that goes around the gym, painted the gymnasium. The gymnasium, if you know the layout of the building, also has a stage on it. The stage serves as the music classroom. So what we did there is the stage curtains were all replaced with new curtains, as well as the window drapery in the gymnasium. So it's now an inherently flame retardant material. One of the things we have to do at all the schools is a lot of the old drapery is not what's classified as an inherently flame retardant material. So every 5 years you have to have it retreated. This material was due for retreating. It was, I think, 19 years old, kind of beyond its serviceable life, so we had that replaced. Moving on to the stage in the gym classroom, we simply had that recarpeted. Again, they had carpeting on that. It was about 20 years old, so that was recarpeted. Moving out of the gymnasium, flanking each side, you have a boys and girls locker room. Now, as a middle school environment, you had showers in there that could have been part of the phys ed or athletic curriculum. That obviously is not part of the program with the 4th and 5th graders, so those spaces are not going to be used. They were simply cleaned, but the shower area will be off limits for the Applegarth use. Stepping out into the hallway, we had 2 small group rooms, existings 31 and 33. Nothing was done there other than typical summer cleaning and some touch-up painting. Moving into the center commons area, flanking the commons, we have the library. No real work done in the library other than, again, some painting. And then a new library collection was installed. I believe the assistant superintendent's office worked with school librarian. They outfitted with some new books, and we took some of the collection from Oak Tree School. So you now have a fully functioning library. On the opposite side, we had the old wood shop. And the industrial arts wood shop program is not part of the elementary curriculum. So that was part of the move that we did last summer. So the industrial arts equipment, the table saws, et cetera, were all moved to the new middle school across the street. And that room is not in service. It will not be used this year. We're actually using it just for some temporary storage right now. Adjacent to the wood shop, we have the art classroom, and that will again serve as an art classroom. No real work done in there other than painting and cleaning. Stepping out into the commons proper, that area has been reestablished with just some finishes. Anybody who's familiar with the building may recall there are acoustic wall panels at the back of the commons area. Those were rewrapped with new fabric and some new floor tile put down throughout that area. Moving then into what is the 79 section of the building. The gymnasium and the areas that I just covered were a 1983 edition. Working your way back into the building steps us into the 79 section. In the 79 section on the right-hand side of the hallway as you go down were science classrooms. Those were rooms 21 and 22. They had a greenhouse and an outdoor area. Science is not part of, or chemical science is not part of the elementary curriculum. Those rooms will not be used. As part of the asbestos remediation that was done earlier in the year, the floor tile was removed from those rooms, the lab tabletops were removed, and the fume hoods were all removed as they had asbestos-containing material. So those rooms will just simply be used as storage, and the board will consider future renovations for that space. The greenhouse will not be used, but there's an outdoor garden area that we had semi-restored. Mr. Ventrello has a group of volunteer parents and teachers who want to reestablish a garden in there, so we simply had all of the old plantings removed and soil rototilled, ready for them to take it over. Moving further through the 79 wing, we had 4 classrooms there. They were classrooms 23 through 26, and they will be used, one as a music classroom, another as the guidance office, one will be a spare, and then one is housing our special services operation. In front of that, you had 2 former conference rooms right off the hallway. One will remain a conference room, and the other will be a workroom for the main office with a copier in it. All of those aforementioned rooms simply had some painting done in them and some ceiling tile replaced. Furthering our way down the hallway towards the main office, touching on security, one of the things we did at the building is we put in a controlled access door locking system around the school. You may be familiar with it here at this building, and we have it at some of the other schools. And it's the card swipe, if you're familiar with that. So we now have a card swipe set up, intercoms and a video intercom at some locations around the perimeter doors, I believe 12 in total. And we reconfigured the layout of the main office, primarily the 2 secretarial desks, so that we have a line of sight to the front door. The front doors to the school were replaced, and we have more glazing in there, so you have a direct line of sight. And visitors to the school will not be able to just walk in the school as they were before. They will have to be buzzed in by a security person in the main office. Some of the perimeter doors also around the exterior have the video intercom set up. We have one, for example, at the rear near the gymnasium. The thought process there is that as a gym class goes out, we don't want to leave a door propped open where somebody could possibly get into school. But if a student had to get back in to use a restroom, for example, the student could go to that, push onto the video intercom, the main office could see them, and then permit the student access back into the building. So that was the realignment of the main office, no other renovations in there. In the corridor going down the 79 hallway, we replaced the floor tile and the ceiling tile. The ceiling, we pulled out the old ceiling tile, painted the grid, we left the grid in place and just installed new ceiling tile. As you enter the building, you turn to the left, that's what's known as the 1960 addition or the 1960 wing. That houses classrooms 10 through 17 and also the nurse's office. And that was part of the original scope with the board. And what was done there is those classrooms all contained the vinyl asbestos floor tile. That was part of the remediation, so that was all removed, replaced with new vinyl composition floor tile. The classrooms were painted. Anybody remembers those classrooms, they had an exposed wood ceiling in them. Ceilings were painted white, and then indirect lighting, which is the lighting you see above your heads now, was installed in those rooms, and the rooms freshly painted. Those rooms, since it was being used as a middle school, and then we found this throughout the school, there were metal lockers that had been installed over the years for the middle school students. So we removed the metal lockers, and now that we're going back to the original intent of the school, which is an elementary use, the area where the lockers were, we refer to them as cubby areas, they were reestablished with some shelving and coat hooks and whatnot for the students. Working our way back across to the other side of the building, which is the red brick building you see from the outside, that's the 1936 building. And what we did there is there was some floor tile removed at the stair landings, and then the board also wanted the stair treads replaced, the rubber stair riser treads. So those were replaced. As I said, the landings were replaced. Working your way down to the lower level, the teacher lunchroom, there was no renovation in there. Into the kitchen area, if you're familiar with that space, there are acoustic wall panels around the perimeter of that. They were also rewrapped with fresh panels. And the flooring in that area remains. We didn't put any new flooring in there, didn't put any new ceilings in there, just did some touch-up painting throughout the space. Working our way across from there, we get to the kitchen serving area. And what we did in there is we've reconfigured the space. Nancy Mitrosek, the food service director, is introducing some new pieces of food service equipment. So basically we've revised the way the serving line will flow in there, moved a couple pieces of equipment around, and then installed ceramic tile on the walls and make it a little more hygienic of a space. The lighting remains, though. We did some painting in there as well. Stepping to the outside of the building, as Mr. Ventrella said, we put in a new playground. The electrical service that he's referring to is, you may recall, we had several classroom trailers out there. There's one set of trailers that is remaining, and that houses the district special services group. At the end of that were other classroom trailers that had been removed. There is a utility pole there from JCP&L that supplied power to a service specifically for those trailers. When those trailers were removed, we left the JCP&L pole in place under the thought that it's possible that you may need trailers in the future. At that time, we thought the playground was going to be going on the opposite side of the building. Now that the playground has landed on that side of the building, we've had the old electric service removed. We've made arrangements with JCP&L. They're scheduled to be out there on the 30th to pull that pole out of there. So you've got a new playground in that area. Someone from the public had commented about some stockpiles of soil we had over there. That is, when we put the playground in, we excavate the area down to a depth of about 14 inches, put in some drainage underneath that, top it with wood chips. That excavated material is the spoils from that. We'll use that to backfill around the border that goes on the playground. Back to the front of the building, the rail that went up the 1936 stair, that's being replaced. If you've driven by there, you see that missing now. That's being replaced with a new handrail. And then around the rest of the perimeter building, just did a little landscaping touch-up, cut back some bushes around windows. At the parking areas, Mr. Ventrella mentioned, we're reworking a student drop-off area, so you'll see some new line striping and signage go in later this week, which will direct parents how to go to the loop for the student drop-off, arrows on the ground, those kind of things, and restriping the bus area. And that's kind of a summary overview of what we've done there.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jerry. Doug, you will come up, please, and give us the transportation plan.
Good evening. My name is Doug Gill, and I'm Director of Transportation. And for the Oak Tree Applegarth routes, we currently have 20 routes that have the students on them. Right now, 2 of those buses are not going to Applegarth. It may add some Applegarth students in the future, but right now, we don't have any. Buses will come out of Oak Tree, make a right on Applegarth, and a left into Applegarth Elementary, where they will drop off the students. There's 10 minutes between the start times for both schools. We have done 3 test runs. One of them was approximately 7 minutes, and the other 2 were less than that. We designed the routes in a safe, orderly, efficient manner, and many of them will look like they have in the past, with the exception that some stops have been moved to make the bus routes shorter. The longest bus routes we have are 30 minutes to give us the 10 minutes to unload at Applegarth, so no student should be on the bus more than 40 minutes, with the exception of the first couple weeks of school, as those routes take a little bit longer, and inclement weather. One of the reasons why we felt this was a good option was siblings will be on the same bus, and you won't have to have 2 different bus stops or different times for your children. Where bus passes should go out by Monday. We've had some last-minute registrations, so they're not totally set yet. We do have the routes done, but as we add students, it's easier to send them out, the bus passes out in one shot. Really don't have much else. We've gone through it, we've looked at the routes. Like I said, they will be similar to what they are in the past, with the exception of some stops will be moved on to different buses to make them more efficient. The other issue we have right now is there's a closure on North Disbrow Road. Pretty much only affects one family, and we have called and left a message for that family, and we are offering them 2 alternate bus stops because the buses will not be allowed to go up there.
That's it? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Dr. Lynch.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Lynch. I'm the district's certified industrial hygienist consultant and have been in that capacity for about the last 11 years or so. As all of the work that's been happening in the Applegarth School over the summer has been occurring, we've been overseeing that process on every level, from the beginning when the asbestos work was being planned and the consultants and the contractors were out. We oversaw all of that process, as well as continue to do kind of oversight and sampling throughout the building as things are moving along. We've been doing a series of sampling rounds, particularly related to concerns about the possibility of elevated lead in the drinking water. And that's been an issue that we've been working on pretty substantially over the course of the summer. Of course, when you leave a building for a period of time without any water running, there's always an expectation that when you do start the water again, you've got to flush it. And we absolutely saw that. We saw that back in June. The school at that point had been vacant for a number of months, and we thought that it would be a good idea to get some initial testing there. Our initial testing showed high levels of lead in some of the drinking water and some of the faucets in the area. We flushed the system. We found reductions, but we also found some movement of sediment and lead through the building as expected. So the district did a comprehensive flushing of the system over the next several weeks, and then we came back in August, retested, and the levels were largely just right where we wanted to be. based on testing done on August 13th. And then finally, we did another round of testing on August 20th, which was this past Monday. Results just came in today. All of the drinking water areas came back absolutely clean. One of the things that's been interesting that we've learned along the way is that there is, in the township, there are some issues with turbidity in the water. And our testing and the results that we got as we sort of tracked things through the building sort of pointed to this. And then we were able, Jerry was able to have some conversations with people at the Utilities Authority, which confirmed that they were having some issues that are impacting this whole area. And they're working on that. And as a result of that finding, we've made a decision in combination with the other results to install filters in a number of places throughout the building. Certainly everywhere where there's drinking fountains and that kind of thing, there's going to be local filters there. But we're also installing sort of the high-level filters right at the building main. As soon as the water comes off of the township's lines and into our buildings, into our building there, we're installing filters there that will do sort of the initial interception, and that should help manage whatever issues the township is going through as well. And then finally, and so from our perspective, we're satisfied that that's the right course of action. I understand that the district is making an additional precaution in that you're going to be making drinking water available to, throughout the building, bottled drinking water as well. But from our perspective, we're quite satisfied with that. We've also been doing air sampling and air monitoring throughout the construction process, and what I can tell you is that we are exactly where we need to be right now. We did initial testing back in June. We were out throughout July. We just did another round of testing now as the construction is sort of wrapping up, and we are exactly where we need to be. As soon as the final cleaning is done, we're going to do our final round, but we're very, very satisfied with the results. There are no elevations in mold. The fresh air supply is amazing. In fact, I was telling Jerry, it's so amazing I may end up asking him to dial it back a bit once we get a little closer, but I have a little bit more testing to do on that. So we're really, really satisfied with that. So from my perspective, I am very, very satisfied that the work that's being done in the district is being done in the right sequence, at the right timing, to allow for the off-gassing of the vapors that are obviously going to be released. That's why we did the gym as early as we did. And it's moving along nicely. The carpets have been installed. We're all in the final processes of that now. And we expect that by the end of, by the end of this week, the middle of next week, all of the major work will be done. The final cleaning will be done, and we'll just do our final round at that point. But we're very, very satisfied with the way that things are going.
Okay. And lastly, just to summarize the information that's been presented by district staff and the district consultant, we are certain that Applegarth will provide an exceptional learning environment for the students that will be entering in September. We believe the building is educationally and structurally prudent. I do want to commend Jerry Tigg for outstanding work along with your your Buildings and Ground team. We actually did a tour of the building yesterday, and it is quite impressive. I also want to acknowledge our BA, Mike, for making sure all of this happened in a fashion that was consistent with within the parameters with which we had to work. And the transportation plan, I think, is also very, very sound and reflects the kind of due diligence that is necessary. We have been responsive to some perceived notions that the traffic flow may be heavier than usual, particularly during the first part of the school year, which is not unusual when there's a new pattern that emerges. So we have reached out to the police department. They will provide police presence to help direct the flow of traffic for the first few days or as long as necessary until the traffic patterns are established there. We have also met with the Middlesex County Department of Public Safety and Health, and we've reviewed our plan, we've reviewed our results with them, and they are very confident that we have taken all the necessary steps to ensure the health and safety of our students and staff. So with all that said, we believe that we have been very responsive to concerns that have been expressed by members of our public related to Applegarth, and we are confident that the school, and as we always have been, that the school is ready to receive students. So that concludes the Applegarth status report.
Okay, are there any comments or questions from any member of the Board of Education? Mr. Kaufman?
Now I'm awake. I just want to have a little point of clarity. A member of the public came at the last board meeting and made a couple of comments about, well, you know, we spoke at our report that the building was vacant, but if it's vacant, how can there have been people working in the building and the flushing and everything else? I think we have to just be very clear. When we say vacant, we are referring to the fact that there are no students and there are no staff in the building, which would require the magnitude of flushing, which would make Dr. Lynchap happy with all of the water fountains, all of the toilets, and all of the flow that has to happen everywhere in the building. If we have staff in there or workers or subcontractors working on a portion of the building, it's a couple of people, and clearly it's not indicative of hundreds of people moving hundreds and thousands of gallons of water through the building. So I just want to make sure that we're clear when we say it was vacant. It was vacant of students and the normal people that would be in the building, not that there was no human beings in the building, and if there were, how could there be work going on? So I think we just want to be clear about that. That's all.
Great point of clarity.
Anyone else? Mr. Masters?
I believe Doug said it. Was it 7 minutes to get 18 buses across? Is that what he said?
Doug,
7?
you want to confirm your information? And you may as well have a seat at the table in case other questions come up. You too, Jerry.
During the 3 test runs, the longest one was just a little over 7 minutes. And that's including the time we dropped off at Oak Tree.
So is that just to get the buses across the street, or you're
No.
saying disembarkation, embarkation included?
Correct.
7 minutes. All right.
Correct.
It's a little optimistic. My son can't get off a bus in 7 minutes.
Anyone else from the board? Well, I'd just like to say that I had an opportunity yesterday to take a very comprehensive tour of Applegarth, and I think it's looking amazing. Haven't been in Applegarth in a while, haven't had my children go through there many years ago. It doesn't resemble anything that it used to look like. It's bright, it's cheerful, it's new looking. The hallways are completely different. You're going to love it. It's very elementary friendly. And again, we have to thank Jerry Tague and his staff for the excellent job, and Mr. Ventrilo too, for their insight in how they wanted this school to look. So I was very excited to do that. I know that there's still a few board members who have not had the opportunity to visit Applegarth School, so we want to make sure that they do get that chance before we open it up to the public for visits. And I also know that there are still people working on the building, so while there's people working on the building, we don't usually let anybody get into the other into the place that we're working on. So it'll be there shortly. I'd like to open it up to the public for any comments or questions that you might have in regard to the Applegarth, just Applegarth. We're going to hold this, adhere to your 3 minutes. We'd like you to make your comments and ask all your questions at the same time, and then we will get the experts to answer all of them. We also know that there is many questions here. A lot of them are the same. A lot of them have been answered this evening, so we'd like to hold this portion of the meeting to an hour, if we could possibly do that. So anyone who has a question in regard to Applegarth, please come to the microphone, state your name and address, make your comments, ask all your questions, and we're going to ask that the board members please refrain from making any comments during this part of the meeting.
Hi, Esther Gregory, 2 Kelly Court. Thank you for the presentation, everyone. My first question is about if we've obtained a certificate of occupancy for Applegarth.
Hi, Jerry Tague here. No, we do not have a certificate of occupancy for the work that is being done. We have some building permit, or not building permits, some permits pulled for some of the work that is going on, but when you do small projects, it does not generate a certificate of occupancy for the building. You may be referring to early on, the board's architect of record made an inquiry to the Department of Community Affairs regarding a building closure and what happens in the case when a building is closed for a period of possibly 2 to 3 years. The Department of Community Affairs responded that the board doesn't really need to do anything to reopen the building other than reopen it. If, however, the building is condemned or deemed to be closed for safety hazard or safety conditions, a C of O must be issued after the fact. So we haven't been closed for that reason, so there would be no C of O. However, I am going to meet tomorrow with Robert Downey. He's the code official for the town. He controls the building department. You may be familiar, we're opening a daycare center at Mill Lake School, Mecca. And for that facility, although we had an existing certificate of occupancy from when that building was constructed, we did what is known as a change of use group there. It went from an E classification, which is educational, to an I4, which is daycare. So for that, we had to go through the process of getting a new certificate of occupancy. I had some conversation with him at the time regarding Applegarth, and he said no, his involvement wasn't necessary, but I'm going to reconfirm that with him tomorrow. If he does require it, he is very cooperative and works wonderfully with us, and I'll get that going tomorrow, but as of now, I do not believe it is necessary.
Jerry.
Can you please come to the microphone?
Didn't do major construction in Applegarth, so you're right, I'm not sure if we do need it, or for staff to enter the building, you would need at least a temporary certificate of occupancy. So
No,
the fine line of construction.
Right, we did not do any we did no construction that changed the structure of the building. We basically just did a lot of cosmetics. However, some of the projects we did, for example, the exterior door locks that I told you about, we have a permit open for that. Some of the electrical work that's going on, there are permits open for that, and those inspections will follow those particular items. But when you have a permit open for a small project, you don't get a certificate of occupancy, you just get closure on the permit.
Okay, thank you. My other last comment was for transportation. It's just a comment. I have 3 kids. Getting out of a minivan, it's tough. So good luck with the buses. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Please come up to the microphone and state your name and address.
Mary Ann Lester, 44 Avenue Y. Since there is an concern about increasing taxes in the town, I was just wondering for the record what the total cost of the renovation was, and was the renovation within the original allocated budget, and if it was over budget, by how much and the reason for it?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gorski, can you handle that?
The total expenditures that have been expended renovating Applegarth to date is $1,173,638. $1,173,638. It includes the following items: classroom furniture, $225,612. That was in the budget. Whiteboard, tack boards, $10,485, that was also in the budget. Asbestos remediation, lighting, floor tiling, and finishes, $374,138, also in the budget. As Mr. Tague mentioned, we did renovations in the cafeteria. That's an enterprise fund, and it was paid for out of the retained earnings of this proprietary fund. Demographic study, $4,000. That was not in the budget. Educational specifications were designed, $7,500, not in the budget. Retro commissioning study of the hardware, the air handling units and so on, $9,925, not in the budget. Gym floor and safety pads, $17,932, not in the budget. Doors and security hardware, $55,108, not in the budget. Acoustic ceiling and panels, $24,208, not in the budget. Trailer design, $6,500, not in the budget. That was for the Plan B trailer design. Playground equipment, $88,000. That was procured through a lease purchase authorized by the board. Instructional projection monitors, $193,000. Again, that was part of the lease purchase authorized by the board. Signage and graphics, $21,965, not in the budget. HVAC equipment, $20,120, that was taken from capital reserve account. That was a $135,000 account on the balance sheet called Capital Reserve. It's residual monies that were left over from prior years' roofing projects where we were able to efficiently close out those projects under budget. We transferred $135,000 from Capital Reserve towards these purposes. Environmental testing, $18,750, not in the budget. Telephone system, $17,958, not in the budget. Site improvements, including fencing, paving, sidewalks, railings, lot signage, $41,700, not in the budget. Now, these items that I have mentioned that are not in the budget have come from the following financing sources. Capital Reserve, as I mentioned, $135,000 was transferred from excess monies appropriated in prior years for roofing projects. Dr. Hamilton initiated a purchase order freeze January of 2012, and the savings from that purchase order freeze for non-essential, non-program items was directed for these purposes. There were significant energy savings due to the very mild winter that we had. Those monies were transferred via the board's directive to these purposes, and we also expended no money on snow plowing. All of that was transferred over to these purposes. Again, the total is $1,173,638.
You also had a savings on the remediation of the asbestos. What was that amount?
Mr. Kaufman's comments was that there were savings recognized on the budgeted amount of money for the asbestos remediation. I'm going to ask Mr. Tague to comment on that.
I believe we originally had around $88,000 in there for the asbestos remediation. If the Building Grounds Committee recalls, that project was slated to be done last summer. Twofold reason. One is with everything we had going on last year with the move and realized we were going to use Applegarth as a storage center. And two, we thought we could get a much better price if we waited to what is the real off-season for asbestos work. As we talked to some of the contractors, they said, school asbestos removal work is hot and heavy in the summer, you're going to pay a premium for it. No one has any work over the winter break. We delayed to then, and we saw about a $37,000, $38,000 savings because of that delay. And the committee recommended that we reapply that to Applegarth.
Anyone else from the public?
Good evening. My name is Joe Castelluccio, 20 Ashley Court in Monroe. What I don't understand is when we do have a savings, I just roughly added these numbers up when you were speaking, you were about $500,000 over budget. Why would we not want to save that money and put it back in so that homeowners would benefit from it? We have a tax bill that continues to rise. Some 60% of our tax bill is the Board of Education or for education in the town. You would think that we'd want to practice some austerity. This is the way we should be looking at everything we do. If we have our own home, our own household, we don't spend what we don't have. If we save money, it doesn't mean, hey, that's great, let's go spend it right away. What we should be doing is saying, gee, how can we put that back in to alleviate some of the tax bill that's getting out of hand? I don't represent a group, and I'm part of a group, and I'm sure many of the people in this room also would understand that when you get increases, I mean incredible increases in tax bills, in an economy like this, we're not practicing austerity. We're not looking at how to save money. We're looking how to spend money. We're using the township and we're using the taxpayers of Monroe as if they were an ATM machine. We're not an ATM machine. You just can't keep going back and spending money. You can't go back to the taxpayers and say, hey, we need, because there were appeals, we need to come back and take money from the people that didn't have appeals when we could have easily saved another $500,000. We had an issue with iPads recently. That was $4 million when you added all the mistakes and the bring back. We need to have responsible people, responsible government. You're elected officials. You're there representing the people in this town. And you should have the responsibility to save money when you can, not spend it. Thank you.
We don't have to answer that. Is there anyone else from the public? Is there a comment from the board? Mr. Gorski, would you like to?
Sure. Sir, I very much appreciate your comment and your thought process on the matter, because Dr. Hamilton and the board and the administrative staff has strived for budget efficiencies and savings throughout the year. As I've mentioned previously, the 2012-2013 budget, the board passed a resolution to waive the election if we came under cap and defer the candidate election to November. We put forth a budget that was $1.5 million under the cap that we could have gone to without going to the voters for special approval for going over. In addition to that, the previous year we were awarded $887,000 of additional state aid that came in July after the budget was set. The Board of Education dedicated approximately $230,000 for tax relief from that extra award. The Board of Education, through the efficient and very active management of the construction process of this building, built this facility about $7 million under budget. In the 2012-2013 budget, we applied $2 million of these savings against the debt service levy. In addition to that, internal savings during the year that are just ordinary and customary for us, we joined a purchasing consortium, and we have a letter from the county saying that we've saved over $360,000 year to date by cooperative purchasing. We've saved $35,000 by switching insurance carriers for property and casualty. And we are opening some new proprietary funds, as Mr. Teague mentioned, for the MECA program, to hopefully generate profits from that venture. One of the problems that you're facing in the tax bill this year is stemming from a systemic drop in ratables throughout the state. This has caused a great deal of pressure on the tax rate. And as I mentioned in the last meeting, there are some green shoots that Dr. Hamilton and I were speaking with Wayne Hamilton from the municipality as far as new business ventures moving in and new ratables. The biggest problem that we're facing, though, is in the area of state aid. The municipality, in conjunction with the school district, has lost a great deal of state aid and is grossly underfunded, specifically speaking to the school district, for state aid financing. We are going to speak further about this, but we are going to encourage the state to fully fund the existing funding formula. If that was the case, Monroe School District alone would receive an extra $5 million of state aid. That would have a dramatic effect on your taxes. And also, the municipality has had significant cuts in municipal aid. So if there's one biggest problem that both of us face this year, aside from ratables, it's the lack of state aid funding. You're taxed from corporate taxes, income taxes, sales taxes, and all of those funds are diverted elsewhere. They're not coming back to you in form of aids to your municipality and aid to your school district. And I would just like to further comment from our conversation with Wayne Hamilton at the municipality. It's my opinion that they're doing a fine job managing under these conditions. They've had incredible health insurance savings, and they've also had staff reductions to really toe the line in this very difficult environment.
I appreciate the detail, but it's sort of like the person that goes shopping and says, look how much money I saved, everything was on sale. So they saved 50% on everything. Had they not gone shopping, they would have saved 100%. And that's where we're at right now. We've had runaway budgets for years. We've had runaway budgets for years. People have been spending and spending. So when we say we're starting to cut now, we're not even halfway into the fat that we've been increasing over the years. We see things as in the future. What I'm really concerned about is that you talk about ratables. Ratables will go down even more, Because what do people want when they come to a town? The first thing they look at is education. That would be the smartest thing to do, because you want to educate your children and you want to have a good educational system. But everything has a limit. You're in one of the worst economies in 100 years. You have over 8% unemployment for 41 months. You have underemployment, which means people who haven't gone back to work, at 15%. We have staggering numbers in this economy. We could play with numbers all we want. You know the old phrase about numbers don't lie, but liars make numbers? We could play with numbers all day long. We could say that we saved here and we took money here. We have been spending out of control for years. So we haven't even dented what we need to cut back. We have to look at it that way. We can't say, well, we just, and every time we do save money, we seem to just want to spend it anyway and say, well, let's spend it over here. We just saved $500,000. Let's go and buy something else.
Okay,
No.
thank you very much. Your time has expired.
Thank you very much.
No, I want to say. I just want to say, too, that in regard to Applegarth, and correct me if I'm wrong, the scope of the project from when we first started, when we were going to open up one wing, has increased. Now we're opening up the whole building. The population on the southern side of town is growing so much that we now had to open the whole building. So instead of the financing for one part of the building, we financed the whole building. And that money had to come from the sources that Mr. Gorski had explained. So originally, the Applegarth renovation was going to be a small part, and we ended up renovating most of the building. Mr. Gorski?
One last thing. On that note, I failed to mention, we also replaced Barclay Brook's roof within the budget in the 12-13 school year. And all of the projects that Mr. Tague delineated before for you could really have been part of a bond referendum. You may recall in 2002, as part of the referendum to build a new high school on Applegarth Road, there was appropriations in there for the renovation of Applegarth School. With that defeat from the voters, those projects were canceled and now have been addressed through these budget efficiencies. So, you know, I could appreciate the general soundbite comments that you made. However, the fact of the matter is that these school districts have been very well financed and funded.
Name and address, please.
Guy Del Rey, 24 Ashley Court. Honestly, I don't think those were sound bites. A lot of stuff that I'm hearing, to me, are sound bites. First time here, shame on me. Just wanted to get an idea, because when you rattled off the expenses, Joe did the math for us. Seems to me almost 50% of it were not on the budget. I don't understand the reason that is, and maybe whoever created the budget to begin with should be looked at. Maybe they didn't do it right, which seems to be the norm here. In other words, a lot of stuff were not on the budget, and like Joe said, because you found money, instead of saving it for the future taxes, you basically took that money, and correct me if I misunderstood, and you spent it on something else. Is that what happened?
From an operating budget, we were able to recognize efficiencies, some of which were due to environmental factors with the warmer winter than normal. Some of them were reserves on our balance sheet from other projects that were managed efficiently. And we were able to, within our operating budget, renovate a school. That's like someone taking from their home annual budget and putting an addition on their home. That's significant. That shows quite crafty financing.
Well, it's just it's slicing the pie in different ways.
Excuse me, we only have one person talking at a time.
It just seems, I mean, what is the process? A budget is put in place, who approves that?
The board approves the budget.
Okay, and then when there's changes to it, what is the process of getting that? The board also does that?
Yes,
All right, just clarification.
thank you. Any,
Robert Roach, 18 Muirfield Boulevard. I just, for full clarification, I would just like to mention that Mr. Gorski indicated that $200,000 of the $800,000 was given back to the taxpayers, and that helped reduce. What he failed to recognize is that was money that came from the state with the direction that it should be used for tax relief. And what the board chose to do is Mr. Kaufman, when he was president of the board, and Dr. Hamilton appeared before town council and indicated certain items that could be cut from the budget that was defeated. And when they got the money from the state, what they chose to do, instead of put the money back in the reserves, they used it to reinstate the items that had been chopped from the budget, which they indicated was not necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Chrissy Skirby, 8 Seminole Court. I'd just like to start off by saying I know that it does sound like a lot of money that was put into Applegarth School, and as the president of the Oak Tree PTA, I've been very involved in the renovations and what's been going on at Oak Tree, and I have to say it's not a lot of money that was spent. The building needed a lot of work, and I do thank the board for how far we've come. I also think it's very important to thank the DEP and the Middlesex County freeholders. I know there was a very large meeting yesterday, I was told, from the officials at the DEP. They came in. I think they met with you, Dr. Lynch, and various members of the board. They reviewed the lead results that were taken, and that's where I think the solution came from to install all these filters and water coolers. So I really think that going forward, I know how many months we've come out here, parents, asking about the results for lead. We were told time and time again that there was no problem, there were no issues, nothing would be done, there would be no further testing, and I'm just happy tonight to stand here and hear that we're actually doing something about it. I'm thrilled as a parent that we are putting filters throughout the building and water coolers. I do want to let the board know the Oak Tree PTA did offer to pay for water coolers in the building. I've not heard whether or not we're going to be taken up on that. If somebody could, Dr. Hamilton or Mr. Gorski or Mr. Tagg, let us know. We are working on our budget right now. That has been offered. That was offered months ago to rectify this problem with the drinking water. So again, I just going forward, I don't think our parent groups should be looked at as adversaries, as it was said last week. We are here all for the same reason. We're here for the good of the children. We're not here to come up here and fight, but when we see something going wrong, we will. We will come out and we will make it right. And I'm glad that all of us came out month after month and fought, because now we know that our children will have safe drinking water. Thank you.
Ms. Skirby, and we will take you up on that offer for the water coolers, particularly in the gym.
Thank you.
Doug Boy, 4 Tamarack Road. I know it was mentioned that we will have police present the first couple of weeks to expedite the flow of traffic in the area of the Oak Tree Applegarth schools. But I am concerned that as the year moves along, that with those buses having to cross Applegarth and knowing the traffic that moves up and down that road at a rather high rate of speed, I have a concern that we could have an accident. Someone that's texting, someone that's on the phone, someone that isn't paying attention may not see a bus pull out. If you're saying that it only takes 7 to 10 minutes to get those buses across the road, then I would suggest that the municipality provide patrol cars to make sure that it is noticeable and stop the traffic so that all of the buses can cross at one time. I know at one time I heard from the board that you did not feel that that was necessary, but once we have our first accident, once we have our first children injured, then we will find that it was necessary. When you're talking about such little time in the morning, 10 to 15 minutes at most, that we would want a patrol car in that area, and then again in the afternoon, I cannot imagine that the municipality cannot afford to send patrol cars to that area for that short amount of time. So I would encourage you to rethink that and see if you cannot get our municipal government to provide that extra security for those buses and for our children. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Jerry Kraskowski, 3 Glen Eagle Way. As long as we got into a bit of a discussion about funding, I have read through some of the School Funding Reform Act of 2008. It may have been amended after the version I read, so you can correct me if it has. While I believe it leaves much to be desired for a district such as Monroe, there are absolutely basic and fundamental concepts that it builds upon, and perhaps you can help us understand them more precisely. Believe me, I would rather have a root canal without the anesthesia before reading it again. It makes your head hurt. But allow me to go to 2 or 3 of the concepts which I believe are fundamental before you respond. It will only take a couple of minutes. Let's first start with the first concept, at-risk students, which the bill defines based on socioeconomic factors. The legislation states, and I am quoting, "It is appropriate to reflect in the formula a greater weight as the district's proportion of at-risk students increase." Pretty self-explanatory, I believe. The greater the percent of at-risk, the more generous the funding. Can you tell us what the percent of at-risk students there currently are in the district and how that may compare to surrounding districts? The second is base pupil amount, which is defined as the cost per pupil of delivering the core curriculum contents and extracurricular contents and co-curricular activities necessary for a thorough and efficient education. I believe this is one of the basic factors for establishing the adequacy budget. Is it? I read that the figure was $9,649 in 08-09 when this legislation was passed. What is it for 2012-2013 budget year? And lastly, Section 28, I believe, of the legislation states, notwithstanding any provision to the contrary, if a district proposes a budget with a general fund tax levy and equalization rate which exceeds the adequacy budget, the following statement shall be published in the legal notice of public hearing held on the budget, posted at the public hearing on the budget, and printed on the sample ballot. It goes further to say, your school district has proposed programs and services in addition to the core curriculum standards adopted by the State Board of Education. Information on the budget and programs is available from your local school district. Just 30 seconds. Does our general fund levy and equalization aid exceed the accuracy budget for the district? If so, what are the programs and services which cause us to exceed it and the approximate cost of each? What exactly is the adequacy budget? What is the approximate dollar amount for 2012-13 school year? And how many dollars in excess of the adequacy budget are we spending? Thank you for allowing me to finish.
Thanks. I will have Mr. Gorski answer the budget questions.
The first question dealt with state aid funding based upon the district's number of at-risk students. At-risk students are defined as students who are reported as being low income on the free and reduced lunch program and some other classifications such as Title I students. And Monroe has historically and still has a very low percentage of the students. I don't have that percentage committed to memory, but I would estimate it to be in the 5% to 7% range.
So it's fair to assume that...
We'll have Mr. Gorski finish answering the questions first.
Also, Monroe has a lower than average percentage as compared to our peers in the county. That goes to the affluence, perhaps, and the amount of students at need within the district. Dr. Hamilton and I and our finance chair had a meeting at the state with Yutzi Thomas, the chair of finance of the Department of Education, and we specifically addressed our underfunding here in Monroe in terms of state aid. And she had indicated that Monroe had received less than comparative state aid funding to its peers based on two metrics, and I mentioned these before, please bear with me. The first one is property wealth per pupil, and that's the one that our district specifically took issue with because 60% of the residents in Monroe reside in planned retirement communities and submit no students to the school. That amount of property wealth skews this metric to seem on average like we're living in a very wealthy community per student, and that's false. The second one is income level per pupil, and we're slightly higher than average there. But mainly it's the first number that really hurts us. In that comparison, we've addressed that with the state, and we've made little progress. The second item you talked about is the cost per pupil, and I was going to add that is defined as adequacy spending. That's how it's previously defined in the budget software. In the 2011-2012 budget, Monroe School District was $13 million above this adequacy number determined in the budget software. We made great strides, the district has made great strides in reducing this over adequacy figure to $7.5 million above adequacy in the 12-13 budget. We continue to try to reduce that number. The third item that you mentioned is the statement posted that the district offers programs and services above the base thorough and efficient budget, the adequacy budget, and that is correct. Monroe has always posted and has been required to post that statement on our ballot question and in the sample, the advertised budget that we put forth at the tentative budget meeting. You will find that nearly all of the counties who are our peers, all of the districts in the county that are our peers have the same statement. The state has a very conservative adequacy model for school districts. It does not include most of the busing services that we provide. If a student's below the 2-mile limit from home to school, you don't provide the busing. We do in many instances because the town doesn't necessarily have the infrastructure to support kids walking, and we're not going to take that risk. Special ed funding, we're well above what the state considers thorough and efficient in the area of special education funding. Gifted and talented programs, again, this is above what the state considers adequate. The Board of Education here does not. Parking lots and lighting are two more items that we would probably consider essential. The state does not. So all of these items in aggregate, to answer your question, are what the components of our above adequacy status are made up from.
Would you like to, we'll get back to you as soon as we get through everybody else. Okay. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak to Applegarth?
Yes. In support of the gentleman that was here before me. Name is Luke Olivier from 10 Foxon Drive, Monroe Township. First time I'm here in 12 years, shame on me. In support to my colleagues here, speaking as far as the impact on property taxes. The message, I work as a consultant in various different disciplines and private sector. The message is simple, that's happening in the environment. People are being laid off. My neighbors across the street have been unemployed for over 6 months now. About 3 or 4 of my neighbors have been unemployed for about the same time. Some of the leaders that I speak to in the last 6 to 8 months, every time I go see them, the story is the same. I had to lay off a number of people. And from a soundbite perspective, some of the message for those that women employ, they're asking them to take a pay cut. So the short message to the board, you need to do more with less. That is what I'm being asked to do. This is what I'm asking my managers to do. That's what I want you to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jody Desai, 2 Northwind Court. I came in a little late. I'm not sure if you mentioned the number of buses that were used on the test. And I was also wondering what that number was, and if we do find it's a colossal nightmare, even for the months with the police there, is there any plan B of going to maybe putting more buses for those students that go specifically to that school? And the last thing I'd like to mention is Again, I walked in a little late. The notifications that will be sent out to students, I don't know if it's district-wide, that will be happening Monday, I heard. However, I've received 2 to students that don't live with me. I need to call the transportation department, but I just want to make sure that something's not wrong with the system, because I did receive 2 students that are in high school and they don't live with me. I will be calling on Monday.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll look into that, but do you have a question, an answer to her question?
When we did the test runs, we used 18 buses.
Okay, is there anyone else from the public?
Hi, Chrissy Skirby. When did we do the 18 buses? I thought last month we said we did it with 6 buses. Mr. V reported that at the last meeting, or 2 meetings ago, it was 6 buses, took 7 minutes.
Mr. Gorski will respond to that?
We ran it with the full bus fleet.
When was that?
Dennis, Doug, when were those runs?
3 times. If I misspoke, I think that we even started the first time around. I think that I was. I'm sorry. Let me come up. That I think we did it 3 times is what we did. They were full 18 buses. If it was only the 6 that we talked about, I know I had actually taken a ride or 2 with a couple of the buses with just me first. Then we did the 18 is what we ended up doing. So they were the 18, and we're expecting the 20 is what we are expecting, even for the student orientation, as a matter of fact. We're doing the full 20. That will not include the contracted buses, if I'm understanding that correctly as well. But it was the 18 buses, it was the 7. And I know that it sounds like it's a very short amount of time, but it only took less than 10 minutes. It was those 7 or 8 minutes. Now, as Mr. Poirier, matter of fact, even mentioned, if we can get support from the police, that would be wonderful. There's no doubt about that. Even if the lights were just flashing, that would slow the traffic down. That would make a difference as far as the safety of the children. But that's all it took on those days, and we did it, I think, the 3 times is what we did. 18 buses across the street, less than 7 minutes.
Okay, so now it's 18, it took 7 minutes? And then how long is it going to take how long are they going to sit in Oak Tree, and then how long are they going to sit at Applegarth?
You know what, Doug, why don't you just use the mic in front of Mr. Leary?
Thank you. There's 10 minutes between the start times.
Mm-hmm.
So from the time we start unloading over at Oak Tree,
How long is that projected to take?
it was taking us a total of 7 minutes from the time that they started unloading to the time that we were parked across the street at Applegarth.
So now it took 7 minutes to unload all of Oak Tree students
And cross the street,
and then cross the street.
correct.
Will the bus drivers have a list of students that should remain on the bus? Will they wear different bus tags
They
to
will
ensure
not,
that students do not get off at Oak Tree? Because don't tell me that a 5th grader or 4th grader won't play around and get off at Oak Tree. What happens in that? What happens in the instance that a child who's supposed to go to Applegarth thinks it's funny and gets off and walks around the halls of Oak Tree and then tells somebody, oh, I'm supposed to be across the street? What happens to that student then?
we will get someone over there to transport them.
Who?
It will be a driver, if not, one of my office staff will do it, or I'll do it myself.
Office, you'll go over and drive, is that legal?
Yes, ma'am, we are all licensed, qualified drivers.
Will the parent be called and made aware of the situation?
I would assume they would, because the office would have to call us, they should call the parent as well.
Okay, what happens if, please, do not see me as being adversarial. I'm just trying to understand, because I have both of my children, one that will be at Oak Tree and one that will be at Applegarth, and I'm very nervous about this. What happens, I know my son got sick on the bus going to Oak Tree this year. What happens if a child gets sick on the bus who's supposed to be at Applegarth? Will they be taken off at Oak Tree and taken to the Oak Tree nurse?
Can I answer that?
Sure.
I'll come up to the microphone, Kristen. I would just, I'll mention it to everyone. I would expect, obviously, if there are any complications as far as, the children being transported between Oak Tree and then Applegarth School. So in this particular situation, as you just mentioned that, there's no doubt in my mind is that obviously there's communication then between the Applegarth staff, the principal at Oak Tree, nurse to nurse, et cetera. The children, we have to stop thinking as far as Applegarth kids and Oak Tree kids. They're all of our students. You have all the staff that is there. We'll make sure as the fact that obviously then we make sure that the children are okay. So in answer to your question, would I call you? Absolutely. Your child was left on the bus, didn't feel well. We have him in a nurse's office at Oak Tree, and when he's okay, if you're okay, then we'll make sure that there's arrangements as far as transportation over to Applegarth. That's how I would handle it. Okay? Do we have any other scenarios? Before I go over there.
Have him sit over there. Sit next to Dr. Lynch.
There's no microphone there.
Yes, there is.
Is there?
Oh,
Can I
that's
have
okay.
your-
We'll just let Mr. V finish.
Okay. As far as the now visitor parking, just to let you know, is that Applegarth does not have ample parking. There's no doubt about that. As you go in, there's also the trailers are to the right, and then to the left, there's also the basketball courts that were even used when Applegarth School was in effect as a middle school. The teachers were actually parking on those basketball courts. There's very limited parking there. My intention as we open up, and even on the student orientation day as we open up, is at the front of the school, all of that will be reserved just for parents. I think it's important that visitors have a right, obviously, to have parking, ample parking. So under my direction, the teachers will go to the right. They'll be parking in front of the trailers. That'll be the grade 5 team. The grade 4 team will then be over to the left, and that'll be on the basketball court.
In front of the trailer?
Yes, that's correct.
I thought that's the loop.
That is the loop. But there's parking there. So there are parking spaces there in front of the trailer. They're already slotted. The loop will be around those group of cars. Anything else while I'm up here? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Jill DeMayo, 48 Linwood Drive. My son's going to Applegarth next year, and I've come to all the board meetings, and I want to thank everybody who's put the effort into getting Applegarth ready, because I think you guys have done a phenomenal job. Thanks.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Somebody decent.
Just a little story. We moved out to Monroe about 20 years ago. We went out shopping for a dinette set, and the one we wanted, we couldn't afford. So we bought a modest dinette set. This is 20 years in the future. We still have that dinette set. And it bothers me, I shouldn't use those words. I really would like you guys to really go into decisions, future decisions, with that type of mindset. If we don't have it, we can't just get stuff because it's nice to have. It kind of bothers me, I forget who mentioned saying that a lot of the stuff that we had, old stuff that's been storage, you were able to sell it to other townships. If Spotswood can buy desks, maybe that's the mentality we need to do, as opposed to always assume that, going new or going better or going bigger is the better way to go. Just food for thought. It's just, if we don't have the money, we really cannot. The problem isn't the taxes coming in. The problem is what we're spending. And we really need to curb that.
Thank you.
I'd like to clarify, we didn't dispose of that furniture because we didn't want used furniture. It wasn't appropriate for elementary age students. The desks were too big.
And do we know what Spotswood is using them for?
I would imagine they're either middle or high school age students.
Or maybe not.
I'm certain that by standard, they would not have been able to use those desks for 4th or 5th grade students because they're too big.
Okay. But just go with that mindset.
I understand.
Going forward, it's like, if we have to put things on hold for a few years till the economy gets better, then so be it. We can't just say, oh, it's only $25 here, or it's only $50 there, because by the end of the year, those $25 and $50 add up, okay? And just keep us in mind, that's all.
Is there anyone else in the public wishing to speak to Applegarth? Well, we have a second public forum because we're supposed to be talking about Applegarth. So the second public forum will be for anything?
Yes, Melissa Mancinelli. I'm at 300 Morning Glory Drive. I have children that went to Oak Tree, one still in Oak Tree, in 3rd grade. And when you did the the 20 buses or so going across the street in 7 minutes, were they loaded with children, full buses of children, getting off in one location, going across the street and unloading again?
No, the students were on the bus at Oak Tree. Buses were empty when they went across the street.
So nobody timed them getting off, going across, parking, making sure all the buses were parked appropriately so children can get off the bus safely and into the school building. That didn't account in that 7 minutes.
The buses were parked appropriately, just there weren't any students to get off of them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anybody else wishing to speak to Applegarth?
Jennifer Marcus, 15 Harvest View Drive. Just a question regarding the water. Mr. Lynch, you spoke before regarding the testing on the water. I know that I had attended the Buildings and Ground meetings where we determined that you had no concerns with the water. So 2 questions. Number 1, why did we go ahead and get all these water filters put in? And in addition to that, did we put them in the bathrooms where the kids will be washing their hands? Because my kid puts her hands in her mouth. Cafeteria, will the employees be washing their hands in filtered water, or are they just at the water fountains? Because that's not where the kids wash their hands, and that's not where the cafeteria employees would be, washing their hands to prepare the food. Just wondering where those filters were put. Our recommendations to our children are they are not to drink the water, they're not buying the food in the cafeteria, because I can't confirm where the issues were. So if that could get clarified for me, I think that would be really helpful.
Well, the first part of your question related to the early meetings. What we said is that we were going to test, and we did a great job of testing that. Clearly, I'll let Jerry answer the questions about exactly where the filters are going to be placed. However,
I'm not concerned about the drinking water. I'm concerned about the hand washing and the food.
I'm going to let Jerry answer all of the questions for where all of them are going to be, but the answer is that they're going to be both in drinking water areas as well as centrally in the building.
Why were they put in, though, if you were content with the results of the water testing?
I don't...
Why did we spend the money to put in water filters if we didn't have a problem with the water? Do we have a problem with the water? Could you expand on that? Because something was said about a meeting yesterday that I didn't know anything about. After being at the Buildings and Grounds meeting, I came home and said my kid is not drinking the water and not eating the food. If it's prepackaged, she can have it because the employees won't be touching it. So I just want to clarify where these, Mr. Tague, if you could clarify where the filters are.
The filters are installed at the drinking locations only. They are not at the hand wash locations.
That's important.
Mr. Ventrolo had a suggestion to the representatives from the county health department who were here, and that was to install the Purell hand wash stations throughout the school, so students will have an option if they want to wash their hands with water that has not been filtered.
Okay, could we make a recommendation to the students if they're washing their hands in the bathroom, not only should they wash their hands, but then they should put Purell on top of their hands? Because we're not filtering that water in the bathroom, and I don't know why.
It's not true. It's not true.
Well, why did, I'm not clear on why we installed the filters.
I'll be happy to answer when you finish asking.
Okay.
Are you done?
I'm done.
Okay. There will be the filters at the drinking locations, but based on the results that we got, we also made a recommendation, and they are being installed, that there will be central filters in the line for all of the water that goes through. So some of the water will be getting filtered twice. And so I think that's sort of belt and suspenders. And then another set of suspenders with the drinking water, bottled drinking water that's being added. And to get at the point that I'm thinking that you're asking, which is what has changed to help us reach those decisions, there's a process that we went through all of the testing that we've done that have led me to make a recommendation like that. Some of the early assumptions that were sort of suggested by health department officials that may have come out earlier in the summer about point source, changing water spigots and things like that didn't make any scientific sense. And part of what we were doing over the course of the process was sort of tracking what we were seeing, and that's what led to the recommendation. I feel very confident that the decision process that we went through here, certainly, I must say, catalyzed by the concerns that some of the members in the community have clearly raised, have helped us to not only understand sort of the nature of the situation here, but it's actually been confirmed by information that we're even hearing from the municipality. We think that the approach that we're taking here with respect to the filters at the inlet to the building, combined with the drinking water filters and the bottled water, is an excellent approach. And I'm very confident that that's
What was the meeting yesterday? Who was it with? I'm not understanding, because I heard your report and then I heard somebody else speak about a meeting yesterday.
I'm going to let others answer that question.
I'll respond to that. That meeting was requested by the Middlesex County Department of Public Safety and Health. It included myself, Mr. Tague, Mr. Gorski, the Director of the Health Office, the Department Head of the Department of Health and Safety, Certified Environmental Health Specialist from the Department of Health, the Department Head for the Environmental Division, and the Supervising Chief Registered Environmental Health Specialist from the Department of Health, along with the County Business Administrator.
Could we look into filtering the water where the people will be serving the food to?
There's
when they're
as
washing
Dr.
their
Lynch
hands?
just indicated, there is a filter being installed at the source. So all the water that's coming into the building from that source will go through this filter.
Okay, and then there are additional ones on the drinking fountains.
Correct. And there's also an additional one at the kitchen sinks as well. There's 2 sinks in the kitchen. There's a series of 3-compartment sink, which is the pot wash sink, and then there's a hand wash sink. There'll be a filter on the hot water coming out of the hot water heater that feeds those, and then there'll be a filter on the cold water there as well. So for the kitchen area specifically, the hand wash and the pot sink may be filtered. I'll have to double check
Could
the
you confirm
piping out
that,
there.
Jerry? Thank you.
But I can tell you in the classrooms and in the restrooms, that water is not filtered.
Okay.
So, and just to kind of touch on how we got to the point of putting the filters in, actually, your husband is to be commended because he reached out to the board, or to me actually, I think back in February, with the question about the lead in the water. Personally, I didn't think we were going to have a problem because Applegarth School, built in 1936, had well water up until 2008. And while we were on well water, the Middlesex County Health Department runs an extensive testing program, testing for lead, copper, asbestos in the water, VOCs, VCOs, coliform bacteria, the list goes on and on. So for a period of 10, 20, 30 years, that testing program was going on while well water was being delivered to the school, and there was never a problem with lead. So to me, I kind of thought, well, there probably won't be an issue, but I brought his concerns to the committee, and the committee said, sure, let's have it tested just in case. And lo and behold, it tested high. When Dr. Lynch talked to the DEP, they said try a flushing program, and that helped to lower things. As we got closer to the start of school year, though, we have a deadline of opening, and although the results were lowering, in talking with Dr. Hamilton, we didn't want to run the risk of, although we see a progression where they're lowering to a point where they're not an issue by the standards, what happens if we don't get there? Let's take a belt and suspenders approach, and let's put them on the spots where the children will drink, and that's what kind of drove this. We may end up, after this flushing, this final round of testing without the filters, to have no problem at all. There might not be any readings, so the filters will just be kind of an added level of protection.
Is there any more questions from the public in regard to Applegarth? Okay, seeing no one, we will go to number 9, the superintendent's report with Dr. Hamilton.
Number 8.
Oh, number 8, I'm sorry. We are going to be tabling number 8 until our next meeting, in not the one on Saturday, but the one in September. It is on the agenda, but unfortunately, there was an unexpected passing of a board member from Jamesburg today, and out of respect to Jamesburg, we're just going to table this until the September meeting. So we will go to number 9, superintendent's report.
Okay. Madam Board President and members of the Board of Education, it is recommended by the superintendent that personnel items A through F be approved by roll call vote.
So moved.
Mr. Kaufman, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Masters? Are there any comments or questions for the superintendent's report? Mr. Klein?
Just clarification on W and X.
Mike.
Where'd everybody go? Just an explanation on W and X, please.
Yes.
Let me just get to it. Yeah, on W, what is that?
These are the teachers who are designated as team leaders at the middle school. The school is divided into teams. Each grade level has a team, Evolution, Mosaic, et cetera. That's the name of their team.
Now, was that something we did last year also?
Yes, we've always done that.
Okay. So let Jeff Gorman pay for it. And then X.
The School Goals Committee?
Goals Committee.
Yes, that's not new. Each school has a School Goals Committee.
Okay, and then, if I may, on double E, where we show increase in contracts, what's the explanation for that? Is it that they have more education?
Generally, I'm trying to see who you may be referring to specifically.
Last sections, you'll see that there's a load of them increasing contracts.
Okay, those, yes, those are teachers who are teaching an extra period. So they're teaching above their contractual amount of time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Then, Mr. Gorski, we will have a roll call.
Mr. Kaufman? Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferroni?
Yes.
Santillis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella? Still absent. Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes.
Madam Board President, personnel items A through F passes.
Thank you.
Moving on to board action items, Madam Board President, members of the board, it is recommended by the superintendent that board action items A through I be approved by roll call vote.
Mr. Kaufman and Mr. Tesler? Again, is there any comments or questions? Mr. Klein?
Just on H, where we're listing new curriculum, does this mean new textbooks for each class?
No.
No new textbooks?
No.
Just curriculum?
Just curriculum.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's the best thing I heard all night.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one, we'll have a roll call.
Mr. Kaufman? Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferroni?
Absolutely.
Mrs. Tellis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman? Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes.
Madam Board President, board action items A through I passes.
That concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Then we will move to the business administrator's report with Mr. Gorski.
Madam Board President and members of the Monroe Township Board of Education, it is recommended that board action items A through AA be approved by consent roll call. And please note that on item O, the travel expenditure, any board member who's participating in that travel expenditure, please, if you're voting for the affirmative on the action item, please answer yes with recusing yourself.
Yep.
Is there any, is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Santellis and Mr. Kaufman. Comments or questions for Mr. Gorski? Then we will have a roll call.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes to all, recuse on all.
Mr. Klein?
Yes on everything, recuse on O.
Mr. Leary?
Yes, recuse on item O for my name.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferroni?
Yes.
Ms. Antelis?
Yes, recuse myself on item O.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes, recuse on item O.
Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes, recuse myself on number O.
Madam Board President, board action items A through AA passes.
Thank you. Does that conclude your report?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We will go to number 11, Board President's Report, and I will try to keep this really short. It's hard to believe that the end of the summer is here and that we will be starting school in 2 weeks. I'd like to thank the Director of Facilities and our custodial staffs at each of our schools who are working very hard to make sure that they are up and ready and clean and healthy for all our students for September 5th opening. Same thing with the MECA, the Monroe Employee Child Care Academy at the Mill Lake Annex. It's coming along nicely. They will be holding an open house on Monday, August 27th from 10 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And a couple of important dates. This Saturday, August 25th, there will be a special board meeting for us at 8 o'clock in the morning here in the Media Center. The purpose of that meeting is to set goals for next year. We have New Jersey school boards who will be coming in to help us with that process. Tuesday, September 4th, 8 o'clock a.m. at the Monroe Township High School Performing Arts Center is opening day for all staff, so that's an exciting time for everybody. And later that day at 10:45, we expect to have a dedication ceremony to celebrate the reopening of Applegarth Elementary School. So we have a lot of good things coming up. Number 12 on the agenda, committee reports. Are there any committees from the board that need to report? Mr. Kaufman?
Thanks. There was a curriculum meeting this evening. We looked at some new curriculum for language arts, social studies, career and technology, mathematics, move forward on those items. We also talked about a pilot program that we're looking to get involved with Pearson to look at iBooks. Not e-books. Thank you very much for you guys to slap me around for that one. We also looked at a proposal from Comcast to provide internet service to families that are free or on reduced lunch programs, and what that would take a look at, and we'll probably discuss that more in detail. We just got some information, and it looks like a pretty good program, and we'll probably talk again about it in another meeting. It was kind of last minute. We were running out of time. That's about it.
Madam Board President, if I may. Sure. Luke Hoffman just reminded me of something. Through the efforts of Amy and Tellis, we were able to receive a donation of about 450 backpacks from Costco. So we will be having a backpack giveaway at our elementary schools. Our first priority will be for those students who have demonstrated some level of need. We'll give those bags away, and then we'll open it up. The principals will come up with another mechanism for distributing those backpacks. So we have 400 backpacks will be given away for free.
Very nice. Very good. Are there any other committees that need to report tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to other Board of Education business. Is there any other Board of Business from any member of the Board of Education? Mr. Klein.
Two things. It's funny that so many people attended this meeting complaining about the taxes and the expenditures. I appreciate that. I just wish all of you were here starting 3 years ago. But I do compliment you for finally coming out and speaking your mind. The first thing that I do want to say is the proper way of state funding is not the way our state does it. Where they basically give upwards of 60% or 65% of the total state budget for education to 31 school districts. The proper way, which I said 3 years ago, and finally a state senator up in
Warren County.
Warren County came up with the same idea that I mentioned 3 years ago, and that is every child is worth the same. I don't care whether the child is in Princeton, Lawrenceville, Newark, Camden, Monroe Township, Old Bridge. They're all worth the same. And the state should see it that way. And my idea at that time, just picking a figure out of my head, was every school district should receive $6,000 per student in state aid as a base. Then when you have special ed and special needs, based on the population, those districts would receive more. Special circumstances, and that could be breakfast, can be lunch, could be school books, they would get more, but at least every school starts the same. in which case we would probably come out receiving, instead of under $3 million, $30 million, which would be fairer and fairer to all of us taxpayers. So that is the proper way of doing it. So all the snow that they give us at Trenton is nothing but a bunch of baloney. Now, those of you that brought up about the spending, I had something prepared for tonight, for this section, and you basically went over basically what I want to state. I'm going to try to read this without my glasses. This board must concentrate on cutting costs, and that means new books, new programs, little-used classes, and using the excuse of staying below the false 2% cap. We all know that the 2% cap means nothing. What the 2% cap is, it does not count salaries, pensions, and medical. And that's basically where most of your cost rises. So when anybody says, whether it be a municipality or the school board says, well, we're staying below the 2% cap, yeah, in one respect you are, but in the other respect, you still have your insurance is going up, your pensions are going up, your salaries are going up, and that's why what you saw now is an increase of about 11%, counting your muni tax. So staying below the 2% cap is definitely not the answer. Our residents can no longer keep paying these large increases each year. This year, we kept our increase, and we're talking the school board now, to about $300. And that was basically because we took $2 million that was left over from the referendum for the high school, and we put that into the budget. Therefore, instead of perhaps $500, it was only $300. Past years, we went up $600, $800. With the increase this year with the municipal tax, they're taking the brunt of the blame because the last 3 to 4 years, maybe 5 years, the municipal tax here in Monroe Township stayed level. If they had any increase, it was bare minimum. This year, because of the appeals, they took a bang of $11.4 million, plus, as somebody said, they've taken cuts from the state in municipal aid. But they took it from townships like ours, but they didn't take it from Camden or Newark or Perth Amboy, but they took it from us. Again, putting more of the tax burden on all of us, the taxpayers. So in this case, we come out smelling like a rose because the brunt of the complaints have been with the township. And as I said, in past years, they've been basically flat. But when you look at our school taxes, we've gone up, I think it was last year, for a house like mine, it was $600, $700 at a shot. The year before was perhaps $800. What we have to do here on the school board, and after I leave the school board, or wherever takes over, it's no longer spending what we have. It's no longer spending what we get back from the state. Our main concern should be taxpayers, without affecting the students. There's a lot of money that goes towards the students that probably could be put off, like new books. We found out that when all the state asks for is for us to review the textbooks every 5 years. They don't tell us to buy textbooks every 5 years. These are areas we should save. And what I'm asking my fellow board members is, forget about the 2% cap. Why don't we come in with a, God bless you, with a budget? I'd love to see a budget we were 10%, 12% below what it was before. These are the people that need the help. I need the help. You all need the help. As long as you have good jobs and you're making big money and you can keep affording paying the taxes, all the power to you. But a lot of our residents can't afford it. And it's not only the elderly. You have families here. The man hit the nail right on the head. Where if you're able to get a job, you were earning $80,000 before, and now you're taking a job for $50,000 and working on the weekend at Home Depot to make ends. You cannot do it anymore. And what I'm asking is, and I know a lot of you try to do it, but we have to make a concerted effort. I don't want to hear 2% cap. I'm talking about big, major cuts. And this was prepared before that gentleman spoke, and I thank you for the points that you brought out. Thank you.
Anyone else from the board? Ms. Antelis?
I'd like to kind of piggyback on some of what Mr. Klein said. About 3 years ago, Mr. Leary and I went down to Washington, D.C., part of New Jersey school boards, to speak to Congressman Rush Holt about funding. Every state gets individual with Disability Education Act funding. That's IDEA. New Jersey receives 12%. Every other state in this country receives between 15 and 21%. I was told the reason that we don't get this money is because New Jersey is rich. I'm not rich. This is money that needs to come to this state. When I try to meet with Congressman Holt, he wasn't there. I've tried to speak to him again about it. No response. He's our congressman. He's on the education committee. We need that money. And when Mr. Klein asks people, talk to your legislators, talk to the government, talk to Rush Holt too, because that 3% or 4% more of IDEA money could really make a difference. In Monroe, where the norm for special education in New Jersey is 13%, we were about 16%. So, you know, that's one point. My second is apparently there's been some rumors out there that our new MECA program, the child care program for our teachers, is free. It is not free. Our teachers are paying for it. They're paying pretty much what they paid for their regular child care, but now they have it here. So that's a profit. The other thing that's come to my attention is enrollment. Apparently, we have a number of children in this district who don't live in Monroe. Other districts have addressed this by doing re-enrollments. I've heard in the last week that there's at least 4 or 5 children coming to Monroe schools that do not live here. That's our tax dollars that they're using. That needs to stop as well. My last issue is the before and after school program. I've talked about this before. This group came into this town about, I think they said about 15 or 20 years ago. We have figured out that they were making $250,000 per year on our students. This was wrong. Now the state has said we could take this over. So all of a sudden they said, well, we'll pay you $100,000. It's not enough. We should get that whole $250,000. Thank you.
Mr. Klein?
Amy, thank you. You brought up about Rush Holt, and I get a kick out of this because if you get a chance to go on the internet and look at what New Jersey receives in Homeland Security funds from the federal government, with our proximity to Manhattan and the World Trade Center, we get one of the lowest. I heard, and I don't remember if it was Arizona or Colorado or Montana, was getting triple what we were getting. Federal taxes. We pay federal income taxes. Most states, for every dollar that they send in to the federal government in federal taxes, they're getting back 80 cents, $1, $1.25, $1.50, $1.75. I think the last figure I saw 2 years ago, we were getting something like 40 cents on the dollar. So what we have is we have 2 state senators who are elected by us to represent us, and they're doing a damn lousy job. We don't get our fair share from the federal government either. Thanks, Amy.
Anyone else from the board? Okay, seeing no one, closed session resolution, number 14 on the agenda. Seeing that we have nothing on the closed session tonight, we will move back to or forward to number 15, the public forum. Again, anyone from the public wishing to speak in regard to anything, please come up, state your name and address for the record.
Now we're after. Thank you. Can I be excused? Let's go, dude.
Humanity break time.
I was just going to get up and talk. It was going to be a couple of minutes. I wasn't going to talk for 20 minutes. Take a recess?
Yeah.
Okay, at this time, right before public forum, we'll give everybody a 5-minute recess.
Nelson Chen, 4 Ashley Court. I have a question and a statement. I'm going to begin with the statement first. I appreciate your efforts, Mr. Klein and Ms. Antelis, going to the state and going to the federal government and looking for additional funding for the town to give us some relief. I definitely appreciate that. I could take out a home equity loan if I'm falling short, and I look to go outside as well. But as many people stated in here tonight, we have to control our spending. It's nice if we get the state aid or the federal government aid to offset some of these costs, but at the end of the day, it goes back to the people sitting here, the people sitting out here in the audience, and the people of the town. Kids' safety and their education is number one. If not for education, I would not be standing here. So I agree with the parents that came here from Applegarth and the conditions of Applegarth School. Both my kids went there, and I think it was time for a redo. I don't agree with some of the expenditures that went forward, but it is what it is. It's a new day now. You have to go from the beginning back on forward. It's too late to go back. The second issue, which is the question, when are you going to address the Jamesburg tax issue? Is that going to be at the next meeting?
Yes, it will be at the next meeting.
The next open meeting?
September, I believe 12th is our next, September 12th. We
Okay.
will be discussing, we'll put that on the agenda.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Donna Poi, 20 Saddle Court. In a document stated sources of revenue for school budget 2012-2013 school year, the third largest source of revenue listed was other revenue, and a big part of that was tuition from Jamesburg at $3,663,360. How much of that revenue have we received?
From Jamesburg?
Yes.
We're not going to be discussing Jamesburg this evening. We're going to save all the questions in regard to Jamesburg and their finances to the September 12th meeting. And I gave her an answer.
So you're not going to answer the question?
We're not going to be discussing Jamesburg finances tonight due to a death of a Jamesburg board member.
Well, I feel badly for that, but don't we have that information anyway?
Do we have that information right now?
Would you mind letting me see that document? I prepared it, but I don't have it handy. I wasn't prepared to talk about the budget tonight, and if you just let me take a look at
I
it,
really
could
just
see your
wanted to
category.
know if we receive any money from Jamesburg.
Absolutely. Jamesburg
Okay.
pays tuition and transportation fees every month.
Okay, and are we receiving the full amount?
We have received the full amount as to the tuition, and there's only one item in dispute pertaining to June's transportation invoice that Jamesburg has questioned the method for calculation, even though it hasn't changed over the last few decades. And the business administrator and I are working on a resolution to that. That's about a $29,000 transportation bill for June. Other than that, I can give you an assurance that every debt that Jamesburg has owed Monroe has been paid, and paid according to schedule.
So then it's fair to say that that $3 million number has been paid?
We're at an interim part of the budget year, but as far as where they are this month, yes, there are not in arrears on any tuition. There's only one transportation invoice that's in dispute.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else from the public?
Jerry Kriskowski. I just want to follow up on something that I asked you earlier. I believe you said adequacy funding for Monroe. We were spending something around $7+ million in excess of what the state considers adequacy funding. That I'm going to make a quick calculation. That's got to be 7 or 8% of the operating budget.
It's 8%. It's 8%.
Okay. Does that money spent in above adequacy affect the amount of funding that comes back from the state? Is it a consideration in the funding that comes back from the state?
Mr. Gorski?
The answer to that is yes. We were issued guidance with the 12-13 budget, and there was an outline for future funding, and the amount that districts are above adequacy will reduce the amount of state fundings that districts receive. That's why the Monroe Board of Education has been so diligent in reducing that number. And we went, again, from 13 million to 7.5, and we're still making progress.
So we take a double hit in effect.
Yes.
We reduce our funding in addition to us spending more than we have to.
Those are both correct statements, yes.
The other thing, I hear comments about the tax rate in Monroe, the municipal rate being flat. Part of the reason for being flat was that they've used $23 million of excess of surplus funds over the last 2 years. And I heard comments here tonight about reserve funds. I think we have to be careful when we start taking the reserve funds to fund stuff, because that's how Monroe Township municipal tax rate got to the hit it took this year, partly living off reserve funds for the past years instead of addressing the fundamental issues that were in the township. Thank you.
Joe Castelluccio, 20 Ashley Court. I wanted to make a comment because we had parents here talking with, obviously, they have children in the school. My children are out of the school. And I want to be very, very explicit that this is not about the parents that have children and the parents that don't have children. We want a good educational system in Monroe Township, and we expect that every child gets what they're supposed to get. There's no question about that. But we are saying how you go about it is what we need the people on the board to look at. You know, we had years ago one-room schoolhouses. People still got educated. I'm not suggesting we go back there, but we also don't need a lot of the fluff that we're seeing and that we're observing, and that's costing the money. The $1.1 million that Mr. Gorski talked about before and then itemized it, there was a $500,600,000 over budget. None of that would have affected the education of the children. They would have been just fine without that stuff. They could have learned whether they had a water fill. We spent about 20 minutes on water filters, which is important. But again, you know, find out where to get the money somewhere else. That's what it's all about. It's not just a blank check. It's not just a credit card. It's finding out how to do it. There's 3 words. I picked it up in the military. It's called adapt, adjust, and overcome. You have to figure out how to adapt, adjust, and overcome each day. That's the way it works. If we have a senator that's not cooperating, well, that could be addressed at the election on election day, but sometimes it doesn't work that way. We know that. But that doesn't mean that we just have to throw up our hands and say, well, because that senator got reelected, you know, that's it, Monroe's not getting their fair share. They think we're affluent or whatever the thing. We adjust and we overcome it. We figure out how to do that. So those are 2 very important points. Mr. Gorski also mentioned after my comments, he used the word crafty, about being crafty with the budget. I prefer that people using a budget use the word austerity. I don't really like people being crafty when they're using my money and the township's money and many of you on the board's money. Use austerity. We don't need to be crafty. And I think those points, have to be taken home. The other thing you mentioned about my comments were sound bites. These are not sound bites. Everything I'm talking to you about have been thoroughly looked at. I'm looking at facts. I have facts. I don't want to bore you with a lot of numbers. I look at SAT scores. I look at 4-year graduations going out to colleges. Okay, this is what education is about, and it's not that good in Monroe Township. So really, if we have to, it's the public portion, sir.
Mr. Leary.
Okay, public portion is public portion. What we have to do is look at those things, and we're all for good education, but let's use austerity. Let's spend what we can spend, and what we have to put off, we put off. There's nothing wrong with putting something off. There are needs and there are wants. I want a lot of things too, but you can't always spend at the moment. Sometimes it takes a little more time. That's all we're asking for you to do. Use the tax dollars appropriately and use it to where it's supposed to be used, and when you don't have it, you have to put off. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public?
If I can just comment, I do
Dr.
need to.
Hamilton?
I feel obligated as a superintendent to just respond to one of your things. I agree with most of what you said, but I beg to differ with you. Monroe students get an exceptional education, and that's evident in so many of the things that we see in terms of what our children are able to do when they graduate from our schools. And I shared with the board in a mailing last week, you're never a prophet in your own land, and I can appreciate that. But when you step outside the walls, the boundaries of Monroe, and you start to hear the reverence and respect that this district is generating because of the programs and the services that our children are generating, you get a different level of appreciation for how well our children are doing post Monroe High School. So I do need to just publicly respond to that.
And
Mr. Leary, Mr. Leary, Mr. Leary, Mr. Leary, we'll do it after public forum, not now.
I'm waiting.
Okay, you wait. Mr. Poi?
Yes, Doug Poi, 4 Tamarack Road. For a couple of years now, we've heard about the inequitability, the unfairness of the school funding formula that we are strapped with here in New Jersey. And this board has basically acknowledged that as long as that formula is in place, as long as the state does not fully fund school aid, then we're always going to be faced with this problem. In today's Star Ledger, in the editorial section on page 15, there was an article called "Special Session Will Allow Trenton to Tackle Its Woes." Well, basically it talks about 2 assemblywomen, an Allison McHose and a Donna Simmon. They are both in the New Jersey legislature. They have jointly sponsored a resolution. It's entitled ACR 131. That resolution essentially provides for a special session of the legislature to consider property tax relief and reform. And it deals with all the problems that we have been complaining about over the last several years, both at the municipal level and here at the school board level. And we can come to these meetings. You can go to a town council meeting, you can come to a board meeting, and you can complain and complain and complain. But until you contact your legislatures who can do something about the problem, okay? Until we do that, then we're just going to continue to complain. So I'm going to encourage the board to, I've made you a copy of the article in case you don't get the Star Ledger. I'm going to give you a copy of the article, but I'm also going to encourage the public that they look at this, that they contact their representative. It's a simple matter. You pick up the phone, you call them and say, I want you to support ACR 131. You don't have to have a fancy letter. You don't have to have a lengthy statement. All you have to do is make that one single statement. You can do it by email. You can do it by phone. You can send them a letter, but keep it short and simple. I expect you to support ACR 131 and do something about the property taxes in the state of New Jersey. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak?
Ms. Brewster, 29 Spruce Meadows Drive. I want to speak. I just watched the meeting last week. I was away, and I noticed that somebody commented about your communication that we've discussed about, and I don't want you to be discouraged because I'm not on Facebook, but I do the slow way, Wegmans, Stop and Shop, the beach, and a lot of people really appreciated the communication, so I don't want you to be discouraged and not continue.
Thank you.
We appreciated it. It was clear. I, for one, was away, so it was nice to know before leaving what was going to go on. So really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
Thank you.
Shell Arminio, 9 Nathaniel Street. Sorry, I am once again compelled to respond to a lot of the speakers and a lot of the board members who again speak about the percentage that we get of funding from the state. With all due respect to Mr. Poi and the gentleman who has been speaking about our status with the state, I'd like to remind everyone that this board is responsible for, again, Mr. Gorski, you can correct me, about $83 or $84 million of spending. Yes, you have control over that.
The answer is yes, considering all the fixed obligations
Right.
that are in there.
Well, the fixed obligations are after you vote for everybody's pay raise, and then it becomes a fixed obligation. So again, once again, we should be coming here and complaining, if we need to, about the kind of spending that this board is responsible for, not necessarily, and I take Mr. Poy's point, I'm going to go home and call my legislator, because that's part and parcel of getting things done. But when we come here, it's not just complaining, and I'd like it not to be characterized that way. This is an obligation of citizenship, and we have elected officials here, and they need to hear what we have to say, and we need to keep them responsible for the $84 million that they are responsible for spending. So to keep pointing the finger at an outside situation that, again, for the last 20 or 10 years, I've been listening to, really is changing the argument and not making the board or the people that we elect have responsibility for the spending that they do have. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Tom Notestein, 15 Nathaniel Street. Just a question with regards to the Jamesburg tuition update tabling. When was that decision made to table that?
It was made this evening.
Did that have to, and why wasn't there a motion to table that? Usually, that's what I would have expected to have seen.
Because I believe I have the responsibility, the option to table things and not table them. Ms. Ferroni, our Jamesburg representative, had just found out that a member of the board had died suddenly this evening. So she came to us, and we had a discussion, and we decided it would be best to table that conversation.
Just with you and her was the discussion?
Oh, Mr. Gorski and Dr. Hamilton.
Thank you. Also, with regards to the iPad updates, it's been probably, I don't know, is this going into the second year now with these, or we had 2 years under our belts already? I'm just wondering, where does that stand with the empirical data as far as breakage, returns, not returns, but lost, things of that nature? Obviously, when we first started this program, we really didn't have anything concrete to go by, and I just wondered, is that insurance plan working? I haven't heard anything about this, and I was hoping for a quick update.
This is year 2. The first year was 6 months from October 19th till June, so this is the second year since the new high school started. I can get you an update on how many have not been returned. There, I do believe, have been 8 that led to police reports off of that deemed that they were missing. So, based off of the policy, 8 police reports were filed. We have about, I don't have the number in front of me, so I'm guesstimating for you. We have about 20 not returned from last year. But we have lots of steps in place, which include contact from the high school, schedules, withholding of schedules, graduation diplomas, and other checks and balances to ensure that we get it when we have the kids. We even have a plan to reach out to the police after calling families and possibly even trying other means of communication to return them, as well as to locate them through the iPad, Find My iPad GPS. I could go and we did do a pretty comprehensive update on the transition in the last couple of months. I can give you all that information, and we'll obviously update you monthly on where we stand as we move into year 2 of the initiative.
Is this where we expect it to be? Obviously, you must have done some projections before you did a project like this. Is this meeting those expectations or above those expectations as far as?
In what regard? It's a multifaceted
the
piece.
breakage and the not returns.
All right, so the breakage, we estimated at a number and it exceeded that expectation. So then that prompted us to look at new solutions and set goals, and that happened in year 2 on why we may have exceeded the breakage. That's why we looked at the new Apple Care program. That's why we refreshed at this time. That was as part of it. But a lot of why estimations is that we were pioneering with the iPads in a lot of ways. So these learning tools were relatively new in the one-to-one implementation, the magnitude of the one-to-one implementation. The use of iPads in schools is rising every day, but there was no foundation or back research on what iPad learning tools would result in breakage and lossages. We've talked about lessons learned over the last year, and from those lessons, what our next steps are to reduce and do things better in year 2.
And how about the insurance? Is that coverage working out all right with that amount? Did that have to be increased? I didn't hear.
We made an adjustment with the refresh, so everything has remained the same from the user out to us, but the new AppleCare Plus program is very significant. It basically says 2 breakages, replacement for everything. So if you go to a Verizon store and take out the AppleCare Plus, it's the same program that you would have for the new iPads. That was not the same when we entered the agreement. We actually were refunded, I think, Mike, about $70,000 to $80,000 on the old AppleCare plan based on the new refresh. So we anticipate a much more efficient process with breakages, returns, and adjustments. And you'll see that in the acceptable use policies as the year goes on, and different steps to help monitor the interaction. We also believe that as we enter year 2 and we look at digital textbooks, so the textbook is actually on the iPad, that there'll be a much more vested piece from the students, that they need them and they rely on them for their schoolwork.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
May I make a statement?
Not yet. We're still in public forum.
Robert Roach, 18 Muirfield Boulevard in Monroe. At the last meeting, I mentioned the fact that on the board's website, there was only one video of the prior of the meetings, and I talked to Dr. Hamilton about having whether more were available. And I think you indicated that you were not sure what was there and would look into it and see what was available.
I did look into it. I checked the capacity to see if there was some limitation on our ability, how many we could keep up there at any single time. And the standard that's been used is that we've pretty much been following the standard that the municipality follows, with keeping one up until the next one is loaded. So what we will be doing is going to the policy committee and asking the policy to just the committee to establish a standard, whether they want a month on there or 2 months on there or an infinite number on there, but we'll establish a policy so that there's a level of consistency.
When you say a month, there's basically one board meeting a month, maybe sometimes 2. I'm only referring to board meetings, not the entire video.
Yeah, I understand, and that will be what we will ask the policy committee to establish.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chrissy Skirby, 8 Seminole Court. I just wanted to respond to some of the comments this evening, one in particular about the spending for Applegarth School. What some people who don't regularly attend the meetings might not know is that there were a lot of options talked about for the overcrowding at Oak Tree. We talked about redistricting. However, a lot of parents came out against that idea, which would have been a lot more cost-effective than opening up Applegarth. There was talk about renting and moving trailers over to Oak Tree for a few years. That was shot down too. But once the board decided to open Applegarth School, the spending that they've done has been necessary. And the spending hasn't been frivolous. It has been to remediate asbestos. It has been to remediate lead paint. The filters are not frivolous. I don't want it looked at like the children at Applegarth are getting things that they really don't need. Filters on the fountains that have lead water going through them are most definitely needed at Applegarth. So I think there are ways in our budget that we could probably spend a little better, but I don't want anybody thinking that because we're opening up Applegarth, we spent money that we didn't need. All of that money that was spent was definitely needed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
Electioneering time.
Anthony Prezioso, 8 Equestrian Way. Now that we've had the iPads for almost 2 years, have test scores gone up?
We have seen a change in our special ed scores, but it's only been 6 months, so we're very hesitant to attribute that increase to the iPad. So we want to do further research and have a longer period of time in which to measure.
But from last year to this year, you have no idea if it's working.
We've had them 6 months, and our scores in the area of special ed have gone up.
Well,
But
they've been
even
okay.
at a 6-month period, that's really not enough time to be able to say, even those scores that have gone up, we really just can't say, we don't have enough data to say that they went up because of the iPad, so we need more time.
Okay. As far as the special ed goes, they've been using them all over the country for years, so they know it's working. But we're not too sure if it's working on our typical kids today. So that's one of
I'm
my
hesitant
questions.
to make that kind of empirical analysis without carefully looking at the data.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wishing to speak? Okay, seeing no one, we will close the public forum. Mr. Leary, I know that you're sitting there awaiting.
On Sunday's Star Ledger Inside New Jersey magazine, they had a listing, county by county, of the school's performance. Now, Middlesex County Vocational Technical School has 2 magnet schools that really get superior students. They have one in Edison for engineering and science, and they have one in Woodbridge for health, and they get astounding scores. When you look at the other 8 comprehensive schools that take all students, we're in there. We've got a very good program, and it's improving. Quit this bullshit of saying we're a bad school.
Mr. Leary? Anyone else from the board? Okay, seeing no one, our next scheduled Public Board of Education meeting will be this coming Saturday, August 25th, 8:00 a.m. in the high school for goal setting. Is there a motion to adjourn? Mr. Kaufman, Mr. Tesler, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? And the meeting is adjourned.